Make sure your insurance doesn't come up short. Get gap cover with ALA. For more information, follow the links in the description.
Hello everybody. Today, proof, as if it were ever needed, that British car buyers are a bit weird. Because here we have the exact kind of car that Britons love to buy. A large, luxurious SUV with a premium badge that goes quite well, doesn't drink too much, and is largely all things to all people. And the Americans love this thing. It is one of Lexus' biggest sellers. They've bought over 3 million of the things. Here in Britain, though, they've struggled to shift just under 60,000. So, is this then a case of us being simply too sophisticated for cars built to American tastes? Or are we just being stubborn old Brits and refusing to buy something that is actually really rather good because we are far too wedded to our own homegrown brands? Well, find out in today's episode of JayEmm on Cars. In part to that massive sales disparity, there is a good chance if you're watching from the USA, you're already more than familiar with the Lexus RX. But if you're watching from Britain, you might not be. Now, the RX is a particularly interesting car. The first generation landed way back in the 1990s, and though it certainly wasn't the first luxury SUV, that has to be the Range Rover, what it was is the first luxury compact SUV. Now, this may be a little bit confusing because today's RX is not a compact, unless you're American. It weighs in at 4.9 meters long and 1.9 meters wide, making it roughly BMW X5 sized, or equivalent to somewhere between an Audi Q5 and Q7. From the Land Rover lineup, the closest comparison I would say is the Range Rover Sport. And today, the RX is joined by a host of other models, including the NX, which I really do quite like, and the UX, which I haven't driven, as well as a bevy of other vehicles, including still some traditional saloons. So, hats off to Lexus for sticking to their guns and still building old school cars. And perhaps for us petrol heads, that is one advantage of the company being so overtly focused on the American market. Indeed, there are rumours that the Lexus name itself stands for Luxury Exports to the USA. Just in case you are somehow unaware, Lexus is the upmarket arm of Toyota. Now, this is not the first time that I've driven an RX. I have sampled an early car. I also got to drive the very last of the previous one, and this 5th generation landed in 2022, with it becoming available to UK buyers in 2023. Around the world, there are different models and trims available, but here it is somewhat simplified. So, there are 3 cars to choose from: the RX 350h, the RX 450h Plus, and this, the RX 500h. What is the difference? Well, the entry-level 350h is what they call a self-charging hybrid. So you cannot plug it in and charge it up, etc., etc. The 450h Plus then is the first time that you can actually get the RX as a plug-in hybrid, and both of those come with a 2.5 litre Atkinson cycle capable petrol engine with then a hybrid battery pack attached to it. Naturally, for the 450h Plus, you've got quite a bit more of electric capability than you do in the 350. Elsewhere, there is a regular version of the 350 without the hybrid gubbins as an entry-level model, but here you don't get it. And here, for the 350 and 450, there are 4 different trims available: Premium, Premium Plus, F Sport Design, and Takumi. With the F Sport Design, as you might imagine from the name, being inspired by this, the top-of-the-line 500 F Sport, with different visuals and a slightly sexier treatment for the exterior and interior, and the Takumi then being the upmarket premium version, complete with many of the Lexus signature elements such as semi-aniline leather and the Mark Levinson Hi-Fi, which has always been one of the best in the business. It is though this, the 500, which is by far the most interesting car in the lineup, because it is a significant departure from the RX of old. And what makes it so? Well, simple. Lexus say that here, for the first time, they have created an overtly sporting RX. And this is no simple marketing gimmickry, because you can tell they have put some serious effort into differentiating this, not just from every RX that has come before, but also the other models in the lineup. So, where they get a 2.5 litre naturally aspirated 4-cylinder, this one, slightly confusingly, gets a 2.4 litre 4-cylinder, but with a turbo and running on the Otto cycle. That engine alone makes 270 horsepower, and it is then joined by a pair of electric motors, one up the front, sandwiched between the engine and the gearbox, and one at the back, which drives the rear wheels. These systems combined then give the car what Lexus call Direct 4 all-wheel drive, a system that is capable of sending anything from 100% of the torque to the front to 80% to the rear, and it will at all times be varying it to create what they call a dynamic driving experience. Though that does sound quite a bit like marketing gimmickry, doesn't it? But the big news, if you're a petrol head, is the fact that for this, the 500, Lexus have departed with their norm of fitting all their hybrid cars with their eCVT gearbox. Now, the thing about the eCVT is that it is annoyingly good. And I know, yes, it isn't technically a CVT gearbox, but it does behave like one, and that's what Lexus call it. So I'm going to stick by calling it a CVT. Now, in case you've not experienced one of those, they do not operate like your regular automatic gearbox. Instead, they're a bit like being on a scooter. So you put your foot down, the revs will climb, and it'll then hold them there until it decides that's no longer necessary. It is an incredibly clever gearbox. It is a brilliantly executed piece of technology, and it is the way that Toyota and Lexus have made the hybrid system so genuinely seamless. In no other car do I find the transition from hybrid to either pure combustion or electric power as smooth as I do in a Toyota or a Lexus. And that is why they've stuck by the system. But for the 500, that's gone into the bin. And here you have a 6-speed automatic. You've even got nice paddles behind the wheel and a full manual mode, which we'll play with in a little bit. And I must say, I am very impressed, because around town and at low speeds, or when pulling away from a junction, that gearbox works brilliantly. The transition of power is just as seamless as it ever was, and it's only when you've really got your foot down and you're accelerating from a standstill that you will notice the odd gear shift, and that'll tell you this is no longer a CVT. I must also give Lexus some credit, because I think for this 5th generation car, they've created one of the best looking SUVs on the market. I know it is difficult to make a car of this proportion that pretty, but I think they've done a darn good job. Particularly here in F-Sport Guise, it's got that different treatment for the spindle grille at the front, just looks a little bit more aggressive, and these 21-inch alloys I actually quite like too, though I'd probably prefer them if they were silver. And it is worth pointing out that if you do go for the 500, you have only the 2 trim levels to choose from. F-Sport, which we have here, and F-Sport Takumi, which then gives you heating and ventilation for the seats in the back, also electric adjustment for them, a panoramic opening sunroof, which sadly this one does not have, and the 21-speaker Mark Levinson stereo in place of this 12-speaker premium system, which is already fairly decent. Me, I'd always go for the Takumi, if for no other reason than that stereo. But whichever one you go for, the standard equipment list is very generous indeed, with both the F-Sport and F-Sport Takumi coming with a billion different ways to help you park the car, including a very clever system that will effectively erase the car from your 360-degree camera, incredibly handy in tight car parks. You have heated and ventilated seats at the front, multi-zone climate control, you've got wireless Apple CarPlay wired Android Auto, a heads-up display, adaptive headlights with a blade scan technology. Ooh, though unfortunately, they don't really work all that well. I tried them last night for quite a while, and they're just not really that bright, nor is the auto detection system that clever. For the most part, I didn't even realise that the auto high beam was actually on. That's a shame. You also get a power tailgate, double glazing, though not soft close, and these beautiful F-Sport seats, which here are full leather, and I've got to say, I really rather like. They are also naturally electrically adjustable with memory settings too. The climate control in here has lots of fancy stuff. Naturally, you have all of the now mandatory ADAS systems, though I will gripe a little bit that when you start the car, you have to manually tick a couple of things and then hit OK on an agreement, and that's very American, and I don't like it at all. Nor do I like the fact that if I do leave the road traffic sign assist on, the first minute of my journey is met by constant beeping, as it gets the speed limit in my village wrong. When I leave the house, it's a 30. This then quickly transitions to a 60, and for some reason, the car thinks the 60 is a 40. I'll also say that the low-speed ride, in spite of these adaptive dampers, is a little bit fidgety. It's never crashy, but it does feel like the dampers and springs just aren't set up quite right. Feels just a little too bouncy around town. I'm not a big fan of it. However, this is a car that has been designed for the sporty driver. So let's pop it into sport mode and see what it's like when you want to have a little bit of fun. Even going to put it in manual. We'll see how we get on. First things first, the pace of the thing is pretty good. Now here in the 500h, Lexus claim a total of 370 horsepower for the car. If you were to add up the combined ability of all of the power sources here, you'll get a fair bit more than that, because you've got 270 horsepower's worth of petrol engine and you've got 190 horsepower's worth of electric motor. So that in theory would give you 460 horsepower. But Lexus are fairly honest. And they do the same thing with the torque figure, for which they claim the car has 550 Newton meters. That's just over 400 pounds-feet. The curb weight of the car is between 2.1 and 2.2 tons, depending on specification, though it is worth pointing out that in terms of the options list, there isn't really much to choose from. That's all done with the trim. Traction off the line is pretty good, and you can genuinely feel the car shuffling that torque around. I also appreciate the fact that they haven't tried to make the thing ludicrously flat in the corners. It rolls actually a kind of surprising amount, but I appreciate that. It reminds you that there is an awful lot going on here. Quite a few big 4x4s I drive now, they try and make the thing stay absolutely level at all times, and that kind of robs you of the sensation of how close to the limit you are. Now, just recently, I got to drive the Jaguar F-Pace SVR, and this is not even close to that in terms of dynamic engagement. The Jaguar is a masterclass. Sadly, also no longer on sale. And as it happens, I think it's the F-Pace customer that this might really appeal to. And for this 5th generation car, Lexus really have gone to town on trying to fix some of the ills that people often cite when it comes to Lexus products. So the old infotainment system with touchpad, that's now gone. And I hope you're happy with yourselves, because now, like everything else, we've got a dirty, great big touchscreen, which actually works fairly well. You've also got driving modes to choose from, though not that many: normal, sport, eco, and custom. As you may also be able to hear, Lexus have tried to disguise the fact up front you've got a 2.4 litre 4-cylinder turbo by piping in a bit of artificial noise. And the result is, well, it's curious, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't dislike it, but nor am I particularly in love with it. Mid-range shove is very good. For the occasional overtake, the car responds nicely, and the gearbox is alright, though here Lexus have made one of a few fundamental errors, because even in sport and full manual mode, it will change not just down, but also up for you as well. and frustratingly it'll change up just before you hit the red line. Why, I do not know. But in more good news, I do appreciate some of the other nice Lexus touches in here. So you've got a Jaguar style controller here for your cabin temperature. You've still got a physical control for your volume, and the wheel has some very natty features too. So on either side you'll see a D-pad, and it may not be particularly obvious what that does. However, rest your finger on one of the buttons and the heads-up display will illuminate to tell you what it does. And you've got a couple of pages, so you've got different things available to you. That is a nice implementation, and I think a lot of other manufacturers could learn from it. Although in all honesty, it does sometimes feel a little bit redundant, because I'm pretty sure all the stuff you can do, they could have found a way of putting on here permanently. The gear lever has a beautiful feel, a nice action to it. The auto hold system works relatively well, although the release is a little bit jarring. The door here can be opened in one swift motion by pressing in the lever here and then pushing the door out. Really like that. For an emergency, you can then pull it towards you and it will engage a physical release. Maybe the biggest thing for me that has been improved with this car over the outgoing one is visibility. In that, because of the way they'd styled it, you had no sensation whatsoever of where that bonnet was. This is much improved, though the car, I'm happy to say, hasn't grown at all. The wheelbase is longer, you've got more room in the cabin, but the thing itself hasn't gotten any bigger. And that's just as well, because it's big, this car. Like the F-Pace, feels larger than it actually is. I'm glad for the fact you can see a bit of it, but parking it in any kind of normal modern car park is very tricky indeed. Ingress and egress, if you've got somebody next to you, can be near impossible. But of course, this really isn't Lexus' fault, and there are plenty of other cars out there which are considerably larger, and people here buy them anyway. I also think they've judged the steering fairly well. It is on the light side, but you'd kind of want that in a car like this. However, you get a little bit of feel and texture through it, and I'd say it's a very pleasant steer. And on that note, you do have rear wheel steer too, making it a little more agile than you might expect, and it does feel like a car that has been very well thought through. But then, would you expect anything else from Lexus? And no matter which model in the lineup you choose, you'll get an interior that is rather sumptuous. Even the base model has plenty of beautiful shapes and features in it, and cars like this, the F-Sport, got beautiful materials, and every single thing that you touch, every switch, every button has a sense of quality of engineering about it. There is just something about a Japanese luxury car that does mark them out. This is a car you truly believe will survive the test of time. And to prove they believe it too, as with Toyota products, if you buy one of these, you can get a warranty of up to 10 years and 100,000 miles, provided you get it serviced at your Lexus dealer. And it just so happens, Lexus dealers happen to be some of the best in the business. The customer experience has been core to the Lexus philosophy from day one. And it's one of those brands where I really wish one day to buy a car from, if for no other reason than every time I have been to a Lexus dealer, I've been treated like a lifelong customer, regardless of the fact that I've actually just turned up on a whim and nobody even expected me. I really like that. And that is yet another reason as to why I am truly baffled that Britons don't buy more of them. But I've got a few theories. First off, Lexus sits in a kind of awkward position in the market. You see, this isn't a particularly expensive car compared with the likes of your Range Rover. This is £80,000, and the top of the line F-Sport Takumi 500h is £85,000. An entry-level Range Rover Sport starts at £76,000, but by the time you've even looked at the options list, if you want an engine that's anything more than the base 250 model, you'll be spending a lot more than this. Without even trying, you'll get your Range Rover Sport to over £100,000. Your BMW and Audi equivalents will be closer in price, but they don't have the gorgeous feel of the interior of the Lexus. They're very nice things, but a little Germanic and a little cold. But this is the kind of car that I would expect to fully appeal to the likes of your F-Pace customer. Somebody who's willing to go with something a little bit different, who's not quite so worried about having the badge on the car. yeah, Jaguar is very cool and in Britain probably does mean a bit more than Lexus, but we know what a Lexus is, and we certainly know it's a nice badge. This is definitely a step up over your Fords, Vauxhalls, etc., and to say nothing of the new entry-level brands that have started appearing in the last few years. Compared even, say, with the BMW i4 that I drove recently, that has a similar RRP to this, about 80 grand, and inside this feels way nicer. Okay, the i4 is full electric and goes like the proverbial off a shovel. And in all honesty, I think it probably is that badge that's a large part of it. However, not all of it. I think Lexus are making a mistake by giving you a 2.4 litre turbo 4-cylinder in their top-of-the-line sporty model. As it happens, I thought the 3.5 litre V6 was just about passable in the outgoing one. And can you imagine telling your neighbours that you've just spent 80,000 quid on a 2.4? It'd be better, I think, for many people to buy a full electric. This particular car also, it sits in this odd halfway house where at low speeds and around town it really doesn't shine, but then when you get it out and about it's a lot better. However, not anywhere near as good as the more focused Jaguar F-Pace SVR, etc, etc. And I suspect that most people buying these don't really care about the sporty bit, and so I suppose for them something like the 450 would make a lot more sense. Although, I should say that the fuel economy in here, which has been around 30 to the gallon the whole time I've had it, is actually not that bad for a relatively large car, which I've driven with some gusto, and also around town, where on occasion it will run in full EV mode. Although, I can't see a button in here to lock it in EV mode, which you would get in the 450. And Lexus here in Britain is the unfortunate recipient of a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because you see, customers in Britain are afraid to buy them on account of their depreciation. But because they are afraid to buy them, that means that they do depreciate. This, though, is where you, as potential customer, can really win. Because your top-of-the-line F-Sport Takumi 500H, new, that'll cost you 85 grand. Today, on Auto Trader, there are several examples available that are 2 years old with less than 10,000 miles on. So they've still got 90,000 miles or 8 years of warranty, and you can have one of those for just £50,000. And that's a heck of a lot of car for the money. In terms of interior space, the car's pretty decent. It is a 5-seater. You have got enough room in the back to sit a pair of good-sized adults, though it's nowhere near as capacious as certain rivals. The boot floor also is a little higher than you would expect. The load lip happily is flat, and you can fold the rear seats individually too, should you need. Naturally, ISOFIX is standard, and I'm sure this car would get the Dad Car seal of approval. For the person that does still do quite a few miles, the economy combined with a 65 litre fuel tank also gives it a pretty decent range. I would say on average you should get about 350 to 400 miles between fill-ups. And as things currently stand, depending on your usage scenario, I would say that one of those lightly used second-hand cars could prove to be a better buy across a period of years and a number of miles than an equivalent EV. Is it a car for everybody? No. And I think Lexus still need to go some way to attracting buyers like myself, who really appreciate the sporting experience. This is a big step in the right direction, but they've still got to take a few more until they get there. And the sad thing is that we all know Lexus are perfectly capable of creating a great sporty car. They've done it before with the likes of the LC500, the ISF, and other models too. And I would love to see them do that with this. Stick a V6 back in it, make the gearbox a little more exciting, sort that suspension out, and I think they'd be on to a winner. But they'd probably tell me that even if they did, they still wouldn't sell any here, and annoyingly, they'd probably be right. So, do me a favour, will you? If you're thinking about buying yourself a big 4x4, or indeed any size of 4x4, before you commit to your purchase, just pop down to your local Lexus dealer, say hello, you'll be treated, I'm sure, quite well, and maybe you'll see that these are cars definitely worth considering. After all, 3 million Americans can't be wrong, can they? Well, some of them I'm sure made the right decision for the right reasons. Anyway, thank you to Lexus for lending me the car, and as ever, thanks to you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.